Do you feel as if you don't belong? Do you know you were meant for something more? Well, you were. Knowledge of who you are and where you really are from is within your reach. Join Janet Carol Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin as they search for the answers as they open up the Stargate to the cosmos.
Aloha, everybody, and welcome to the Stargate to the Cosmos. Let me pull my mic closer. And I'm your host, Janet Carol Lessin. I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin, and my producer is Deborah DeFranco. You're listening to Revolution Radio Studio B. And our guest today is Ken Johnston, and I have to pull up his page. And my mouse is stuck. Okay, Sasha, Dr. Lessin, will you please talk about our guest, Ken Johnston, while I get up his bio page? Sasha, are you there?
Am I supposed to talk?
No, I'm
bringing
Sasha on first. No, I'm bringing Sasha on first. Hold on one moment, please. Deborah, is Sasha there?
Can you hear me or not?
Deborah's our producer. Deborah.
Microphone.
Yeah, Sasha's here, but you can hardly hear him. It sounds like he's in the background.
Okay. Okay, hold on. Ken, hi, Ken. Welcome to the show. Why don't you start by introducing yourself, because I couldn't hold your bio page. And while you're doing that, you're going to be on with Deborah DeFranco. She's our producer, but she's a wonderful co-host as well. And I'm going to go see what's going on with Sasha's mic. So I'll be right back. You two carry on without me. I'll be back in 2 minutes.
So, Ken, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing here.
All right, can you hear me? This is Ken.
Yes, sir, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Well, it's kind of a jury-rig situation. I've got this mouthpiece, the microphone in the front, but the headphones are not working, but I'm listening to you live on the screen, so bring it on.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're here today to talk about.
Well, that's an interesting thing. I guess the thing to talk about is back in the old. Are you ready for this? Back in the olden days, when I was with the Marine Corps and I learned to fly and became a pilot and then got out and went to work for NASA at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, where I was one of the 4 civilian astronauts that was testing the lunar modules in the vacuum chambers and being sure everything worked, and to help train the astronauts how to fly it so they could go to the moon and get all the glory. Now, since then, I've worked with the space shuttle group people, and more than lately than that, I've had the privilege of working with people like Sasha and Janet, and people that are looking at who's really been to the moon and who's really been to Mars. So that kind of just brings you up to date where I'm sitting.
Okay, so Ken, for our audience who isn't familiar with you or has not heard about you before, just give them a little bit of a brief bio of who you are, besides having worked for NASA.
Well, right now, I'm not sure I know exactly what you're asking. What we almost didn't make it on because we had 14 miniature horses outside and the rain coming in, and a panic to get them into their stall. So we're in the house dripping wet and working with the with the computer so that I could get online and follow on and answer any questions what's going on. Because right now we're moving into a stage of disclosure worldwide, and I think some of us are being tapped because we've been involved in the program all the way back into the 40s, 50s, 60s, et cetera. So, by the way, I get to turn 80 here in about 24 months. So,
wow.
See, I say it that way, that I'm almost 80 in 24 months. That means I'm getting conditioned for 80. Oh, big deal. We're going to truck on for another 100 years.
You
so I don't know
much younger.
Sasha turned 80 this year. Ken, I'm back. Sasha turned 80 July 9th, so he's really in excellent shape, and he's probably going to outlive us all.
Well, I thought I was older than Sasha. Well, welcome to the club.
Yes. Sasha, I want to just test your mic. Are you able to speak? And can we hear you? Go ahead. No, it's not working. Why don't you come in here and share a mic with me? And just close the door so we don't get feedback from the back room. Okay? We'll figure it out later. Come on in.
Now, Ken, your claim to fame is photographs, NASA photographs that someone wanted to toss in the trash, right?
Well, I don't know that that's a thing of fame. It's just that I became the director of the Data and Photo Control Department over at the Lunar Receiving Laboratory, and my job was to be sure that we got all of the information provided to the scientists around the world that were taking lunar samples and that information. And because of that, I was privy to all the inside conversations, inside groups and things. And so whenever I was told to go ahead and destroy all of the files and records that I had because we had finished up going to the moon, and I argued with them. I said, well, wait a minute. We've got universities and places that would love to have the geologist's initial evaluation of the samples brought back from the moon. And I said, we should just give them to the different universities. And I got into a conflict all the way up the line at NASA. And they said, no, get rid of all of the extra, get rid of them all. Well, I took that as a carte blanche or whatever. I got rid of all, and I took one set home with me. And that was getting rid of it. And for decades, nothing really happened too much. I did wind up meeting with a gentleman by the name of Richard C. Hoagland whenever he was coming to Seattle to give a talk, and I told him what I had, and he showed up at my house the next morning after the big conference they had, and I had a big giant safe, a double door safe that I had been able to pick up good, and we opened it up, and they started going through the pictures, looking at them, and saying, "Oh my, would you look at here?" It says these look, and I had never paid that much attention to it from the standpoint of other than the geology.
Yeah.
And there were craters that had domes inside the craters that were obviously occupied by beings. And so I guess the archive that I maintained, and in one particular situation, there was concern that I was going to be bumped off by something, and then the position came out that they were more concerned about it. If anything happened to me, then there would be more concern, and so they backed off and left alone and just decided to deal with whatever we came forward. And now we've reached a point of where we're looking at full disclosure and start making direct contact with other beings and extraterrestrials throughout the whole thing. So that kind of brings you up to date where I am now. Is I still have and I still make available, and we still are preparing to review not only in what was on the moon, but now more on what's on Mars.
So let me get this straight. The pictures and the film that we saw about going to the moon weren't the ones taken in real time, and the ones that were taken, we've never really seen, correct?
Not quite, no. Initially, the pictures and things that you saw were correct, were there, but then once they realized, oh my God, we got to fix these things, some of them started getting modified and corrected. Now, what I have in my archive are the originals that still have the bases and things on the moon, and the areas and stuff that they were concerned about, but by then it was too late. They were already been. I initially took a duplicate copy down to Roswell and made the donation to the Roswell Research Center, and so that was the only protection that I had, was to come public, and it's just to be sure that if something happened to me, it was because they were trying to get rid of me. But by then it was too late. The information was out there, so they've had to learn how to, whoever they are, have to just deal with it. Go ahead.
Ken, sorry to interrupt you. Sasha has a question or comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, if I may, is that for me, one of the most startling things that you got into was not about the man fights that Debbie is alluding to, but the flights were pictures were taken, and you got to see them before they were ever edited, and that's the one of the most exciting stories. What were the people that were working on the project, the Apollo projects, expecting, and what did they get, and what happened? Could you tell that story?
Well, the people that were working on over at the Lunar Receiving Laboratory and processing the samples and shipping them out to scientists around the world that had need for them, most of them were so busy they didn't have time to really look at the samples and things themselves. I've been in contact with a few over the decades that, well, in fact, I hate to say this, they're almost all gone, all passed away, because I was the youngest kid on the block, so to speak, then. And now I'm just trying to keep up with Sasha in age, so we'll go from there.
Ken, the other day we had Marcus Allen from Nexus Magazine UK, and he had a whole theory that the entire moon thing was fake. And I know that that's gaining popularity, and I don't know, maybe there needs to be a big debate, fake, not fake. But what evidence, besides the public program and 60 years of history, 50 years of history, what evidence do you have to stand up to the naysayers? What do you do if you were confronted by someone that's saying the whole moon thing was fake? What would you say to someone who would say that?
Oh, you mean that? I have people that weren't even born when we did this, and that I was involved with, and they say, "Oh, you guys never went to the moon," blah 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 blah. And then you've been looking at the wrong information, the wrong data. Come visit me, and we'll go to the archive, pull them out, and you can see for sure the real stuff, what we actually saw and what was really going on, and as well as there are some of the pictures that I have that were on the horizon that showed where there were craft observing what we were doing on the moon. So we didn't go to the moon by ourselves. We went to the moon while we were being observed by the, shall we call them, extraterrestrials that were waiting on us to grow up and mature. I'm not sure that we have succeeded too much in that in the last 40 years because they've tried to still trying to keep everything shut down. So anyway, here I am, alive still, and I hope to keep it that way for another 120. How's that?
In their suits, was there a way of dealing with the extreme heat and the change of pressure on their bodies when they were on the surface of the moon, if they were on the surface of the moon? Is that built into the suits? I know you wore the suits. Now
are you talking about what we as humans had to deal with? The pressure?
Yeah, I'm saying what exactly when the astronauts walked on the moon. Our last guest said that they could not have done that unless they had the right suits that could deal with temperature and pressure changes that would be murderous.
That sounds to me like someone who said, I couldn't go out in my bikini on the surface of the moon, could I? And the answer is no, you couldn't. We wore fully pressurized spacesuits that maintained the equivalent of sea level on the Earth, and we increased the oxygen percentage so that we had that. But this was all inside of our pressure suits, and that's the only thing we do. Anytime we left the spacecraft, we had to put on our spacesuits, disconnect it from put on the portable life support system, which was the backpack, and that's which provided us with the oxygen and the pressure we needed inside the suit for us to be able to live. Because let's face it, if we didn't have that, we would have died immediately.
Yeah, I got it. Did that pressure difference affect the film in your cameras? This is before digital, so did it affect the film?
That's the first time I've been asked that question having to do with the cameras, because the cameras we used were pressurized inside. I'm just remembering as because, like I say, I've never been asked that question. That's strange. So that and then it was mounted it on our breastplate on the outside of a spacesuit, so that we could then reach up. We could look down on the top. Instead of looking on the backside of a camera that's got a screen where you can see what you're looking at. We had to look at ours on the top, and it was pretty hard to do it with a space helmet on, but you could tilt your head down and you could see what you're looking at and move your chest, because it was solid mounted to the front of our spacesuits. So the pressure was, all we had to do is just hit the button and take the pictures as we went. I say we because I did have the privilege of training with the astronauts that got to go to the moon. My time was inside the vacuum chambers and with the company, the Grumman Aerospace Corporation, that built the lunar module. So I have more hours wearing spacesuits than most all of the astronauts that ever went into space. So a little over 5,000 hours, if you'd like to know what my astronaut spacesuit time is, a little over 5,000 hours. So that's how you had to stay alive. Go ahead.
The suits that they wore back then, are they similar to what our current astronauts wear when they go on spacewalks and that type of thing? Or has the technology changed, or is it still pretty much the same as it was back in 1969, which was yesterday, July 20th, 1969, was the anniversary. Today's the 21st.
50
Go
years
ahead.
plus. Yeah, 50. Well, the spacesuits have not changed that much at all. Some of the materials, and this is just going on from what I've observed, and not that I've had the experience of it, because when they go extravehicular activity, EVA, and around the space stations and out in actual space and everything else, these spacesuits have not changed all that much. So, it was, as you mentioned earlier, if you didn't have it on, you didn't have the right pressure inside the suit and the percentage of oxygen that you need, you wouldn't have survived. As human beings, we're actually a fairly delicate species. So that's about the best I can say. Okay.
That's very true. So with all that in mind, now, what kind of creatures, what were they seeing? Were they seeing ships? We were at a conference with Bill Tompkins, and he said that when they landed, I forget which one it was, the one by the crater, that when they looked up, they were surrounded by ships. At the first Apollo mission, did you ever hear, and of course you weren't in the loop, but maybe you might have heard, what they saw? Were they followed? Did they encounter any ships when they landed?
Okay.
Did you find out any ships when they landed?
When we landed on the moon with Apollo 11, and that was Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin that were inside the command module. Mike Collins was still up in orbit around the moon in the command module, because he had to maintain being sure we had a way to get back home with Buzz and Neil on the lunar surface, and they both were outside of the spacecraft, moving around. They were looking around, and Neil was asked about the question. He says, "They're here. They're on the rim. They're watching us," and that was the key that let us know that we weren't alone on our getting on the moon, and showing that we were becoming a spacefaring species to those that were observing and watching. So, there was a recording that where the astronauts had given out a clue. Yep, they're here. And that's about all we heard about it. Now, I can't speak from first-hand information, first knowledge. Further on in the other missions, there were some, particularly during the leaving the lunar surface and heading back towards the Earth. Usually, we were followed part way, and the crew, they had their little key phrases and key words, and says, "Roger that, it's all clear," or "Roger that, we're being observed." And or we're watching real careful. People on the Earth think, well, they must be watching what's going on, being sure they don't do something stupid and kill themselves. So there were codes and things we had to use. And after I left we finished up on the Apollo program, I left NASA very shortly after. Well, about 3 years after that. It was all up to the scientists to dig out information and go from there. Now, the rest of the stuff got canceled. I say it's pretty hard for a new person, a young person that wasn't even alive when we did that stuff, to come in and say, oh, well, they didn't go, they didn't do this. Because if you got into part of the communications with the direction that the headquarters was going with, and that is to shut down any possibility that people would know that we actually observed other craft of different types, and both coming and going from the Earth and on the lunar surface. So there was a lot that took place that the average person didn't have the opportunity to observe. And I guess I'm really blessed and that I was at the right place at the right time to really see some of the stuff that we're still talking about. That puts us there.
So you were working in the program for another 3 years after the landing. Did I get that correct?
I'm sorry. I'm getting kind of an echo, must be, and I'm having a little trouble, and part of it's my hearing, and I apologize. It's a little hard for me to understand your wording. Forgive me.
I'll say it again. So you were working with NASA for an additional 3 years after July of 1969 when they did the first moon landing, correct?
That is
correct.
Did
I hear you right?
Yep. And
okay,
then,
so you're part of that. Did the employees, gossip about what was going on? Did you guys talk among yourselves? It wasn't the official narrative, but were you employees saying things, at the lunchroom and stuff like that? Were you talking about it?
Only
what was really going on?
Yep. There were a few friends I had in the right places that would barely even talk to me about what was going on. And one of the things I think was used to prevent the problems is when they would finish or get at the very end of a contract with the various companies that were part of that, they would shut off all communications. And in my case, at the Lunar Receiving Laboratory, we once we had the samples and things headed out, they laid off. Good God, I've forgotten how many thousand some odd people, and I was part of the laid off. I was on a contract then and went to Vandenberg Air Force Base, in which we were tasked with creating another launch facility for space and space station there at Vandenberg. And these things, they were controlling it by changing the contracts and shipping people. About the time when you thought you had information and you were ready, then your contract ended and you didn't have a job. And the problem we had is, we were all normal people. We had wives and children and families and things. So we had to just buckle down and try to find a new job and things like that. Now I was in Seattle. I because of that, I left the whole space program and went back to aviation, and was with the Boeing company in Seattle, where I was a flight instructor on Boeing 737s. And it was good grief. I'm trying to think what year it was, but it was at least 4 or 5 years after I left NASA that Mr. Hoagland was in Seattle putting on a conference, a nice program. And I was invited to go there. My friends came in the night I was working the night shift, and they said, "Oh, you guys got to go down there and go to listen to Hoagland because they're talking about this and that." So I said, "Okay." So the next day, it was my day off. I went in and I had written a little note of introduction to introduce myself to Mr. Hoagland and those, and said I'd love a chance to be able to meet and talk with you. Well, when I signed in and I paid my money, the person read my little note. They said, "Don't move." And I go, uh-oh, I'm in trouble, because we were always told, you don't talk about the things that we discovered or we were looking at, because we had secrets and top secret clearances, and you don't want to lose those. But at any rate, and a couple of minutes later, Mr. Hoagland comes out of the back and he said, "You're just who we've been looking for." And I'm thinking, oh God, I am in trouble now. Had me come in and sit down on the front row. And the next morning, he and a group of 5 came to my home, and we opened up the safe and we started digging out the data and records and mission reports, all kinds of things, which I was privy to because they were, I'm sorry, let me jump in here a second. Once we had finished the moon program, the government sent a task force, and these guys were pretty serious type people. They would come to your house and want to know if you had any pictures and information and material and stuff that, you'd taken home with you from the space program. And they were confiscating all of that stuff. And I was very, very fortunate that, when you have a central heating and air conditioning system to a house, you've got a big vent someplace where air comes back into the system. Well, I had opened that up, and I had stashed all of the records and things I had inside of there. So when they came to my house, and they wouldn't know, well, did you take pictures? Do you have this? And my answer, and I lied. I apologize. I did. I said, no, heck no. And so that was it. So I made it from then on for about 10 years that everything I had was locked, hidden away. I even had an account at a bank where you have not a vault, but inside the big vault where you can walk in, where they give you drawers or cabinets and things where you can have important things stowed. And that's what I had done with those for years. Anyway, that's how I wound up having the material and the information and kept them for so many years. So.
Yeah, they're not so polite these days. They just go in and, destroy your house and get it. They don't care much about the protocol. But I want to just back up. Clifford Stone was on our show one time, and he said that he was part of the rescue teams. Like they would go to these downed craft, and they had all these extraterrestrials that maybe. And so his team took care of it. He learned how to do wounds in like 70-some species. But then after like 2 years of doing it, they did that. They break down, and they send people in different parts of the world. You're forbidden to talk to each other, and then a few years go by, and you start to question your own reality. Did I really do that? So that is you're verifying that's how they do it. They break up teams. You're busy with, everybody gets busy with their own lives, on top of their often forbidden to communicate with each other. So back then we didn't have all the internet and all the stuff we have now. Right. So I'm sure they do have a strategy, but back then it's very easy to disperse people around the world by reassigning them to different programs.
That's actually called the Men in Black. When you're talking about Men in Black, that's exactly what they were when they came to my house. So you're absolutely right. We had to, we were not allowed to talk about things that we had seen and heard. We were not allowed to keep the materials and things that we had done. And later on in life, I did run into other people that had bits and pieces because they weren't quite in the position where I was, where it all went through my little department that I had, the data and photo control department. So I guess it's just I look at it this way. History, whatever, wanted to keep the information, and maybe they came back and picked some of us or whatever, but I was blessed in being at the right place and did what I did, and that is just keep the truth facts from the original, so that when you were to care, I guess if you were to compare the data and material that I had saved with what's available now when you go in to do a research, you'd be shocked at how much manipulation and changes had been made. So that's where I'm at. I'm just keep me alive. I'll keep it going.
Now, you wrote a couple books. What are the names of your books?
I'm sorry?
You wrote a couple books. What are the names of your books?
Oh yeah. Okay. The first book that was let me turn around and find the doggone thing. Oh, there you go. Ken's Moon Autobiography, and that I posted a lot of the documents and records and pictures and things, particularly at the bases that we observed on the lunar surface. One of the best ones. It actually, I'm fairly well convinced that our secret space program had already been on the moon, because this particular base, being a military person that I am, the bubble domed housing, if you want to call it, or where they were living on the lunar surface, are so arranged and spaced out with tracks in between, nice little rows. If I were to count them right fast, about 12, 15 domes, and then out of a ways from them, they're giant-sized domes that were used to put the telescopes and monitoring equipment and things like that. I have pictures that actually show You've seen these gondolas that look like balloons that they carry way up in the atmosphere for testing the atmosphere and what's going on. Well, we had those, or somebody had them on the lunar surface. I have some nice pictures that have been published now that shows attached to the edge of a crater this huge dome, gondola, if you want to call it that, and then the cable at the bottom of it going all the way over it and up to the edge of the rim of the crater into a room that's there, so that once they released the gondola, which is helium, and it would go up. That's one of the ways that they were using it on the lunar surface. So there were bases established on the lunar surface.
Are they all blue, black, and white photos, or were there colors?
Black and white were the pictures and things. That was an interesting thing. You might like this. We were taking pictures, lunar surface and in space and everything of in color, and some people had done some testing to see what other we could use, because it'd be a whole lot cheaper with the thousands of pictures and events that we had. Over in my data and photo control department, they said, we'll just publish them in black and white, and so fine, did that. But yet I got the originals in color. So
wow,
it was available in color if you were in the right place and you had the right authority to have access to the full color. And then sometimes it was better to have it in black and white, because you got a better look at what they were taking pictures of. The contrast between light and dark in the black and white pictures was better than some of the smooth stuff in color. So that was blocked as well.
So you have a second book. I want to exhaust this topic and then go to your second book. What is your second book? Do you still have that out there?
Yep. Here we go. The second book that was published was The Regression of a NASA Whistleblower. And it got published before I had a chance to correct the title, because I was very uncomfortable with the term whistleblower, because being, with a secret clearance, top secret, and all this stuff, you're a little concerned about the way that it's going to be presented. But that's the people that were monitoring and checking that's the way they had it published, was, the regression of a NASA whistleblower. And this is where, now I had a history and background in college and the military of working with hypnotherapists and being able to do a hypnotic regression to pull out the data and information which we might normally not be able to remember. And then I had the privilege at one of the conferences of meeting a gentleman by the name of Sasha Lessin. Do you know who that guy may be? Anyway, so we set up the opportunity for me to undergo a session of hypnotic regression and pull out more details that were kind of suppressed in my memory. And fortunately, that got published in the book, The Regression of NASA Whistleblower. And this was published by, you probably know better than I do. Here we go. I'm trying to find the name of it here. What was the name of well, this was in 2017. And, someone named Karen Christian Patrick did the review and edited of it. I was trying to find the name of the printing company that printed these. Well, anyway.
I'm looking up now to see if I can put the link on I'm looking it up to see if I can put the links on the show page, so if anybody wants to purchase the books, they'll be able to. So I'll let you know what I can find here. But I wanted to know, and I want you to only reveal what you're comfortable discussing. And so, Dr. Lessin, I want you to come over here, because you were the regressor. Are you ready to go into that information at this point in the show, Ken?
And I apologize if you could move back a little bit from the microphone, because it's so overpowering that it's a little hard for me to decipher what you're saying, and I really do want to be able to answer the questions.
So I backed up because I wasn't sure if I was too far or too close.
No, that's better.
Dr. Lessin's going to come in and talk to you about that second book. Are you done going over what you want to discuss about your first book? Are you complete? Do you feel complete with that information before we go on to the second book?
Okay.
Do you have anything more you can share? Okay. So go ahead, Dr. Lessin.
Well, first there seems to be there was a continuity in get rid of these photos. It wasn't destroy them. It wasn't. It was a hint from somebody that might have been talking, double speaking, and wanted you to do what you did. I just wonder what your reflection is on that.
You mean, so why did I go for getting the regression?
Did Dr. Page want you to save those photographs?
You know, I don't. We may have to do another session here, Doc, so we can find out what I'm forgetting. Because since then, I've been in this stupid, and I think that's been kind of controlled. Another auto accident where I was rear-ended so hard that the short-term memory things that have been brought up made it hard for me to recover some of that, and that's been since we did the regression sessions where you actually worked with me on that, and I appreciate it.
Okay, let me just refresh your memory about what you said. That the big bosses had just gotten some of this film, and they asked you to run the projector, and you saw what you saw. You saw the structures. You're so excited. This was and you were going to the next day show it to everyone on the base, is what you said. And however, the next day when you went to show it to people, it didn't. The part you saw with your own eyes and that the big brass saw wasn't there. It had been fixed, and then you walked past people that were using white to obscure certain parts of the films. That's what that's what you published in the first book.
Okay, so we were able to break through that through the hypnotic regression session that you put me through, and that it was very interesting because it went all the way back to my childhood, where my first contact with, and I'll just come out with it, first contact with extraterrestrials as a young kid in the first grade, in reality, where we lived out in the country in the field, called Hart, Texas, Hart. 560 people and mostly farmers all around in the area. And that was where a craft had landed. This was 1949 when this happened, which is also interesting enough, the same time that we had the crash in and around Roswell. So Roswell wasn't the only place that had extraterrestrial craft come in and land or crash in that case. And one where I was close to was only like a football field out from our farm. Our closest neighbor was like 3 miles away. And I'm not sure that's what the area you wanted me to get into, but those were some of the things we were able to get into and find by doing hypnotic regression and going back into my memory and bringing that information. Now, since then, since you and I have done that, I think we did another follow-up once, but now since then, it's interesting. Once a person has gone through hypnotic regression, then other things start popping up and coming up in their memory. And since you and I talked the last time, we should sit down and talk about some of the missing time that I had as a child, a young person growing up, and the places where I had been. So, and I'm coming forward with that now. People can say, "Oh, he's a total wacko." Well, it's a free world. They can say whatever they want to, but when they finally get around to looking at the data and checking out the information, and since we are in the phase now of full disclosure starting coming out, I'm a little more comfortable with coming out and saying, yes, we have now made contact, and it's this year. I really truly believe before the end of this year, and with the government and everything going on, that's going to come more coming forward, so we can all work together for the better of humankind and I guess celestial kind. So we're moving in some very interesting times right now, Doc. So
We certainly are. Go ahead, Sasha. Continue.
This is some question about the other side of the moon, which isn't really dark. It's just that we don't see it. Could you could you tell us about the other side of the moon that we don't see?
Okay, and I hate to do this to you because your specialty is not in astrology and what have you. But when people say, "Oh, well, there's the dark side of the moon," well, I'm sorry, there is no such thing as the light side and the dark side. Because think of it this way: whenever the moon, we look at the moon, if it's full, then the part we can't see is dark, because that means that the moon is around the Earth, so that the front side of it is getting sunlight on it. Now, when the moon completes an orbit around the Earth, the backside of it is facing towards the sun, and it's fully illuminated. So it's brighter. It's just as bright as it would have been on a full moon on the front side. And whenever the moon is full bright, it's real interesting. I think it's interesting. When I was in the fourth grade in this little town, the teacher was trying to say, "Yep, it's on the dark side of the moon, and everything's dark." I said, "No, wait," and I drew on the chalkboard and showed them how, as the moon moved around the Earth and the sun is off on the other side, you'll see that's why you see a half moon and a partial part of the moon, and then pretty soon you're seeing more of the moon, and you see the bright side of the moon, but it's on the other side of the moon is on the other side of the Earth from the sun, looking at the Earth. And when you see a full eclipse, that's because the Earth has come between the moon and our sun, and so for a short period of a few minutes and stuff, an hour or so, the front side of the moon is just as dark as the back side would be, because the Earth's shadow was casting that. So anyway, I'm sorry. I like getting in and showing people that you don't just say that's the dark side of the moon. It's the back side. Okay?
Ken, what I'm asking, I really like what you said. I understand that entirely. But there's always the same face of the moon that's facing the Earth, and so I'm not saying that it's dark. That was just a popular thing. What's on the other side of the moon? Your rockets that you guys were sending up took all these pictures of the other side. What's on the other side that we don't see?
Well, you wind up seeing a lot more of the craters and et cetera. And I have lots of pictures of all sides of the moon. And the only problem we have is with our telescopes and astronomy from the Earth looking at the moon. We never get to see it. What it amounts to is that you use one of these globes that you're looking at that you can spin around and looking at the Earth, and you can see one side to the other. Well, the same thing with the moon. It's rotating or spinning around, but it takes it like 28 days for it to make one complete rotation. And that's when you see a little silhouette of the moon, and you see more. Well, that's because it's rotating around the Earth, between the Earth and the sun, and that's where the backside winds up getting illuminated for just as long as it does coming around and looking at the front side.
But it does the moon, or does the moon not rotate on its own axis? I thought it does not rotate on its own axis. I understand that it revolves around the Earth, but does it also rotate? I never heard before that it rotated on its axis.
Yeah,
and
that's what
I
was explaining that. Well, what it amounts to is that the rotation on its axis, it takes basically 28 days for it to make a complete rotation. So it's a very slow rotation, but in the same process, it's orbiting around the Earth. So as it rotates on its axis, it keeps the same side pointing towards the Earth as it revolves completely around the Earth. So you've got, it's not spinning day and night in 24 hours like we have here on the Earth spinning. It's basically 28 days for the moon to make a complete rotation, and it makes a complete revolution around the moon. That's why we wind up only seeing one side. Now, since then, and I could be getting this wrong, we've discovered that one side or one portion of the moon is more dense internally, and that weight of that on the axis is what keeps it locked in towards the Earth, that one side, so that it keeps the only one side facing the Earth as it makes a complete revolving around around the Earth. So that's part of it. It keeps us from seeing what's on the backside. Now, that's why bases and things that are on the backside of the moon, we don't see from the Earth with telescopes and what have you. We do have satellites that have gone around that do take pictures, and that's where you're getting into a lot more of the top secret control, because with our satellites going around the moon taking pictures, there is a department that has access to that kind of information that I am no longer privy to, but I know they have to have that, because that's where they can observe craft coming and going to the backside of the moon. So we're moving into the full disclosure.
What's the factor they don't want us to see?
Okay, now you moved a little too far away, so you're in a distance. But now the question was what?
What's the factor on the far side of the moon that they don't want us to see?
Well, since I haven't seen it, I only have some verbiage from people that do work on that. In fact, I do have a couple of pictures in my archive that shows. I don't know where I have that. Actually, I have on the Ken's moon one of the pictures of one of the bases on the backside, and I'm pretty well convinced that the pictures I have of that base was one of ours, us humans from the Earth. And just because of being military and how we're so staunch about how we lay things out and to organize it so that domes are spaced out properly between, and that there's a roadway in between each row of them and everything like that. So that when you have bases like that, now that's on the surface. Now, if you are getting into what could be on the inside, one of the most interesting thing is once Apollo 11 did it. Once they had fired they had lifted off the lunar surface, rendezvoused with the command module, transferred the material and information into the command module that they had, then disconnected the lunar module from the command module, moved away from it slightly, and then fired the retro rockets sufficient to cause the lunar module to start descending down and impacting onto the lunar surface. And I was present there for that information, because with Grumman, we're the ones that built the lunar modules. At any rate, when it impacted the lunar surface, the moon rang like a bell. And we had installed on the lunar surface seismic instruments that could pick up the vibration and sound, and the signal sent back to the Earth from that. It's how geologists will set off an explosion and look at what kind of a reflection they get coming back to their instruments on the Earth's surface. They can determine if there's oil down below, and that's one of the ways they can find out what's on our Earth. Well, on the moon, it basically was hollow inside. At least a lot of it was, which is part of the reason why it maintains the close distance. Because if it was a whole lot heavier, it would have to swing out a little bit further than it was to be able to maintain. So there's an awful lot of science involved in why the moon why it rotates and keeps the same side towards the Earth, and what happens if is it hollow inside? So yeah, there are bases all over the backside and all over inside the moon.
What about the theory? Well, yeah, with it's hollow, so there's indication of bases inside. And what about the theory that the whole thing is artificial? It seems like a lot of what you're saying is supporting that. Our guest on Sunday said that when we have the eclipse, it's somehow that they coordinated it so when we have the eclipse, the one body totally covers the other. So that seems like some kind of advanced science to position the orbits of these two things, the moon, the sun, and the Earth. So we have this perfect, eclipse that it overshadows the other. So, right? Am I saying that correctly?
No, it's from the Earth. What she's saying is from the Earth. They're both the size of a $50. and it's so perfect, and that means that if you were marking the eclipses and solstices on Earth, you would have a cosmic clock, a solar clock anyway. And that's remarkable. It shows that there must be some kind of planning that's beyond the random.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that our astronomers and scientists finally discovered. In fact, you might correct me because this is my memory loss. We've actually read ancient text before the moon was in orbit around the Earth, written about ancient civilization here on the planet Earth, and that it was brought into orbit, or you can say it may have come so close to the Earth that it wound up being swinging, and that the Earth captured it, and it became the moon around the Earth. Well, or was it brought and put in orbit because by having it in orbit around the Earth, remember the tides that we have are caused by the moon as it goes around the Earth. And it was part of that scientists have said that kept the oceans rising and falling and basically stirring the pot so that human beings and other species of animals and things like that could get stirred in the waters and becoming creatures, and the whole evolving of animal, vegetable planets and intelligent species because we had a moon that created the tides that kept it being stirred. Otherwise, it would go stale, and we probably would stink. Okay?
Yeah. So it seems like the moon and its orbit and relationship with the Earth is all artificially designed and maintained.
Yes.
And intelligent. And there's intelligence behind that.
Now, that's one answer. You can say yes. That the evidence shows that, as I said, the moon was brought into the proper distance from the Earth, okay, so that they could stir the pot and cause whatever is going to create life, existence in the water, and that's we're talking about thousands of years that it took. So the moon plays and still does play a very strong part in the existence of life on the Earth. That's probably the only way you can say it. And that's why it was hollow inside, but it was the right size to make it have the right distance from the Earth to have the effect upon the tides and the water that's on the planet Earth. So there's a lot of very interesting things that were brought in by scientists, and let's call them the creators, if you will. Mm-hmm. So
we're coming up on our first break. I want to just give Deborah a chance to ask a question or comment before the break. Deborah, are you listening?
I am listening. I have no questions at this point. I'm just, listening to the data.
So I'm feeding you enough information to start with.
I just tell the break. I might just say that Stuart Swerdlow, who had access to the CIA's documents, tells the story that in the ancient texts of people that were fleeing Dracos, who ultimately rode the Death Star into the position of Venus, came to the surface in 7 dome cities, settled on the first continent, which was Lemuria, with their beef, which was the dinosaurs. And then later the Federation sent the Atlans to Atlantis, and the Maldecans, who had sheltered on Mars, to the Gobi Desert, and the Federation took the Dracos off of Venus and drove them underground. So there's lots of, and it's certainly totally consistent with what you were saying about the stirring the pot, because the Draco Death Stars that passed the Earth drew off the moisture that was totally covering the atmosphere so that it couldn't be any land, and it rose the first 2 continents, Lemuria, which is where we are now in Hawaii, and Atlantis, which is in the North Atlantic. So there's many alternative explanations, and I like Occam's razor, the idea that whatever seems to account for the data best, but even more than that, probably they're all correct and they're all contributing factors. We just got to put them together.
So we have 1 minute before the break, and then we come back for the second half. What would you guys like to cover in the second half, Sasha? Well, we do want to go into your story a little bit more about what you want to reveal of what happened during regression. So that's what we're going to cover when we come back. And anything else you want to cover, Ken? We want to make sure you get your story out there the way you want it.
Well, I'll just try to answer the questions the best I can and let the cards fall and where they may. So let's go for it.
Okay. So we're waiting for the music, but second half we're going to go more into the second book, The Regression of a NASA Whistleblower, selections from a regression session, and that was a very interesting time.
How heavy were those suits that you had to wear? That was the one thing I didn't get a chance to find out about.
Well, the music's coming.
Oh.
Any second. Anyway, there's the music.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
The future is uncertain. I know this. Death is inevitable. I know this. But one thing is certain. As free men, it is our right to live unencumbered and in peace. And those times are quickly drawing to an end. And in these times, peace is certainly an illusion. And as the chains grow tighter, our ability to slip those chains increase incrementally with every passing moment. Inaction is no longer an option. It's time to raise our voices like a cacophony of thunder and lightning and tell the masters no more. And this is Nighthawk, and I say, for myself, no more. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, because the freedom is slipping away.
Hello, my name is Mr. Rowe. I am the host of Reality Extraction, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I utilize logic, intellect, and magic to methodically atomize, vivisect, analyze, examine, study, scrutinize, and extract an essence of reality from a fog of illusion and confusion. You can find me on Studio B every Thursday, 1700 hours Pacific Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern. No topic taboo, no subject too strange. I strive to take a neutral standpoint during the dissection of the topic at hand. That's Reality Extraction with Mr. Rowe on Revolution Radio.
Narco-syndicalist commune. We take it in turns to act as a sort of executive officer for the week. Yes. But all the decisions of that officer have to be ratified at a special bi-weekly meeting. Yes, I see. By a simple majority in the case of purely internal affairs. Be quiet. But by a 2/3 majority in the case of more... Be quiet. I order you to be quiet. Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left. Yes, I have. Look. It's just a flesh wound.
I don't believe I've seen such a display of courage, skill, nerve, grace, and stupidity.
I'll do you for that. You what? Come here. What are you going to do, bleed on me? I'm invincible. You're a loony. The Black Knight always triumphs.
Roundtable Live, Monday through Friday, 1 a.m. till 4 a.m. Eastern Time. Bring your mind, bring your ideas, bring your voice. King Arthur had nothing on us here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com.
Did you ever feel that things were not quite right? That everything was just ever so slightly askew?
Do you have, to paraphrase Morpheus, a splinter in your mind?
If you're interested in hearing the latest information about UFOs, the paranormal,
ancient cultures and structures,
monatomic elements,
longevity,
fantastic discoveries in science,
download it to your brain,
then tune into us. Hi, I'm Dave.
And I'm Mackie.
And we are Shiny Side Out, Sundays 2 to 4 a.m. Eastern. See you then.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. All right. Thanks for listening while we take that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
Hello, everybody. We're back. This is your host, Janet Kira Lessin. You're listening to Stargate to the Cosmos. Our co-host is Dr. Sasha Alec Lessin. Our producer is Deborah DeFranco, and she comes in and says wise things now and again. And our special guest today is Ken Johnston, Sr., and we are talking about his two books, Ken's Moon, Revealing the Dark Mission of NASA, and his second book, which is called Regression of a NASA Whistleblower, Selections from a Regression Session. But before we get back to the show, I'd like to remind everybody to please go over to the donation button on revolution.radio and go up to the top. There's a tab on the left-hand side at the top. You can make your one-time donation there, and then if you go over to the Patreon button, you can make a recurring donation. And we do thank you very much for your donations, because that allows us to keep bringing programs like these to you. So thank you so much for that. Now, back to you, Dr. Lessin. What would you like to say before we return to...
Okay, yeah. Again and again, hypnotherapists that don't even know each other, working with totally different people, come up with people who go into powerfully remembered stories of being trained, selected, and trained for their missions, and their missions being to talk about space and the other beings there. And Ken is going to tell you the story of what he found out about his other job.
Are you talking about the other job that I have now?
The other job is as an ambassador that you were trained as a public educator on the beneficent intentions and the reality of our experience in space.
Well, yeah, that's true. One of the things that makes it not easy, none of this is easy, but making you feel strong enough to come forward, and that's one of the things I've always, when I've been on the program anywhere, is that other people have also been chosen and that have sources of information that they have kept locked up inside their mind. And the thing is if they die, it's going to be gone, and we won't have that information. So the only real safe that people have that have had experience is to come forward and to make it available. Because once you've come forward, such as what I was trained to do, it winds up that the information then becomes so real that they don't. You got to be careful. I have to be careful saying this. I now have them protecting me because they don't want anything to happen to me. Because if something happens to me, everybody that's been involved, and that's like right now what we're doing, if something happens to us, they want to know why they bumped us off and got rid of us when the information has already been made available. So that has been my protection for the last quite a few years, decades, is coming forward with the facts and the information and the data and the truth. And I'm comfortable with the fact that that's part of, I guess, who I am and what I was put here on Earth at this time for. So I guess I'm doing what I was told to do, and I'm doing the best job that I can. So that brings us back to why I found Dr. Lessin and was willing, because I actually had experience and training in hypnosis, because in high school, military school, and college, I was a pretty good hypnotist myself, and I would help students study for exams through studying through hypnosis, and that they would be able to remember it. And the same thing for myself. But I had keyed myself to prevent others from being able to hypnotize me. That was one of the things that Dr. Lessin had to get through, and that was I had to go through and get rid of the block that my mind had been, that I had set up for myself to prevent me from allowing anyone else to take me back into a regression in time. And fortunately, by that, in fact, and I think Dr. Lessin, we had about 6 months or so where I had to do some practice and releasing my control to allow you to be able to hypnotize me, so we could go back into my past history and my past life and events and things that happened. Maybe we really get into talk about some of the things that brought up that was a shock to me to realize that what had happened, and it all fits together. So am I correct? Pretty much correct to where we're at right now?
Yeah. So let's start with when that craft landed in the field, and you and your brothers saw that.
No, I'm sorry. I'm getting too
how
much.
You got selected, the initial incident, when you were the one that ran forward with love and interest.
Well, my dad was a captain in the Army Air Corps before the Air Force, and he did lose his life during World War II. But I grew up always wanting to become a pilot and later an astronaut, and this is where picking certain events and training, and let's go back to 1940. I guess that would have been 1947 and 48. Whenever I was in the first grade, when we had we lived more than 5 miles outside of the little town called Hart, Texas, and neighbor called my stepdad, T.C. Ray, called him and said, did you guys see that? It looked like something either crashed or landed out from your house. And so my brother A.R. and brother Jimmy and myself, we put on our coats and stuff, and we wanted to run out and see what it was. And, of course, T.C. wasn't. He was a typical, normal World War II corporal, I guess he was. But he wasn't in a big hurry to go out and see what was there. So we ran out, and we got to this area of where the wheat had been. This happened in I think it would have been close to October. It would be just before we had big mowing down of the wheat and the harvesting. Anyway, so we got across the street and we came to this big circled area where the wheat had been smashed down into kind of a circular squashed mode. And when you're the baby of the family, I was the youngest of the three boys, A.R., Jimmy, and Ken. So I outran the other two boys to get to that smashed area. And when I got to the edge of it, I'm looking, there was this bird that was on the far side of the circle I was in, which I identified as looking like a whooping crane, which those things could stand up as much as 4 feet tall. And since I was only like in the first grade at the time, it was as tall as I was. And it turned its head, looked at me, turned its head back, started taking a few steps, started trotting, opened its big giant wings, flapped its wings a few times, lifted off the ground, and went poof, disappeared. Now, when my brothers got to the circle, I was excited. Did you see it? Did you see it? Did you see that bird? Did you see what happened? It disappeared. And, of course, they said they didn't see anything. That was the beginning of selection. I use that as a question mark. That's where I wound up. There were some periods of time that happened between, I guess it would be 1940, probably 1949 until 1955, where there were some missing times in my life. Like, when you start doing regression, you start going back and back. And that was when, like, one of the most important ones, where I was actually picked up by extraterrestrial, taken back to the base, and where I was in training with other young humans to prepare for direct contact, and all of that sort of came out. Dr. Lessin, did we get into much of that on the regression?
Sure
do you
did.
recall? We did, huh? Okay, because I remember there was a housing. You were talking about buildings that were probably a quarter of a mile high on this planet, and I was in training, and wow, when you're coming forward and you're talking about things that have come out of your own brain and experiences, you can get choked up and realizing that, well, here I was being trained, and then I had the opportunity to go with a couple of the others and a small craft up to a big mothership, in which we would land on that, and there's I'm about ready for another regression session to go back and bring all of these things up. But the point I'm getting at is that my dad was killed during World War II, and here I was chosen, if you want to use the term chosen. I was at the right place to be the one, so that I had the training and the experience, so that when NASA was going to the moon and all, then I was able to bring that experience into lock sync with what we were doing as Earth species, making our movement towards into space, so that we can take ultimately we're going to be taking our position, I say Earthling humans, within the Intergalactic Federation of Sentient Beings. Now that's a mouthful, isn't it? The Intergalactic Federation of Sentient Human Beings. So we are at that phase. And the hardest part, though, is, as I think we mentioned a little bit earlier, is when people that have closed minds, they'll say, that's a bunch of hooey. Well, if it's a bunch of hooey, why is it locked into people's minds and brains where they've experienced things such as that? And then there's a little bit of time warpage when you're dealing with the speed of light and moving things around and events. So yeah, we went through that, and we're back on Earth at the right time, and there's a whole lot of stuff going on that the average person is gonna miss out on it, because all they want to do is just go to parties, have sex, and drink as many booze as they want. Well, some of us enjoy maybe a good sip now and then, but don't go scramble your brain. You're gonna need it. You're gonna need it, because it's gonna take a lot of guts to step up to and realize that we're not alone in this universe, and we've been put here for a reason. So yeah, I'll shut up a little bit and you ask questions, and maybe you can drive me in the right direction.
You want to go? You mentioned earlier that there was something you recovered about Mars. Do you want to go into what you recalled about being on Mars, or something on that level?
Yeah, Mars is a fascinating place, and some of the training that I was having, we had gone to Mars, and there's some bases on Mars. I was quite young at the time, and I was wanting to get back home. I'm talking about my young being someplace between 6 and 9 years old, and I had been trained on how to use spacecraft, the kind that they had, discs, what have you, small ones, And interesting though that I did wind up as a lunar module spacecraft pilot, test pilot. So anyway, so here I was looking. I'm going to get off track. I hate that automobile accident. I think that was a planned thing to try to keep me from being able to remember and come forward. But thankfully to people with the knowledge and experience of Dr. Sasha Lessin to help me put some of the pieces back together. So, all right, where am I trying to go with this? Help me out, somebody. You got to get me back on track here.
Yeah, well, Andy Bashaga said you rescued him when he was in trouble on the Martian surface.
Oh, okay. Well, now that's we had I called them hoppers. It's a small type craft which would repel the gravitational forces on Mars to allow the craft to spring forward up into the air, into the atmosphere around Mars at an angle that would allow us to pre-program where we wanted to come back down into a landing. Now, interesting enough that Andrew Bashago has had similar experiences where he was on Mars, and in this case, the group of us that were being tested and trained and all this, our base on Mars, we received a signal, a message to come and to help them, because there were and there are species, not human. I'm talking about animal type species on Mars. In some of the pictures and things that I have from our satellites going around Mars shows evidence of I'll call it creatures that move around on the Martian surface. Well, I had to take a hopper and go over to where Bashago was at, and he was backed up into a corner of a bit of a little canyon, and these critters were headed that direction. I was able to bring the hopper in close enough for him to make a run over and jump in, and then would levitate and bounce back up off and take him back over to the major base. So that's how he and I actually had met before we ever had the opportunity of meeting on Earth. And since then, there are all kinds of things going on in his life as well as on mine, and having to do with eyesight and education and training and those things. So I've had the privilege of running into a lot of very famous people that have been involved in the Mars bases that we have. And of course I've gotten older, and maybe they don't need me that much anymore. And thanks to Dr. Lessin, we've been able to because once you get back, you get deprogrammed. You'll be put under hypnosis, and they'll try to scrub your memory so that you go and just lead a normal earthling human life, and maybe with certain thoughts at times like, that's strange, that looks familiar, wonder where that is. I have that happening quite frequently, and then thanks to the regression sessions and stuff, been able to turn out and find out, well, my gosh, there was something that happened that went on. You did wind up over there, and this is being made more public by not just myself but other people, and it's comfortable knowing that you're not alone, because they can bump you off if they want to get rid of you. So I don't know.
Yeah, so that's a part of it. That's a really very, very. You have been harassed for years by some very obnoxious people that are being paid to make you miserable and distract you, and you've held up under this pressure. But I've seen you've been a targeted individual. That's what I think.
Well, it's. I guess the situation is that, and I try to use the terminology chosen, and I don't want it to sound like we're talking in religious, oh, God has chosen you to do this and that. Not necessarily. It's just that, and I've often thought that those of us, such as myself, that had family that were involved in the latest thing having to do with aviation and what have you, and then, of course, my dad losing his life during the war, and then in order as a part of a payment, I guess, to my mother or the family and what have you. And you know, if you were to look at the pictures, I don't know if you guys have ever seen them, but the photographs I have of my two brothers and my mother and my dad, I don't look like like them necessarily. I was almost a towhead blonde, hazel green blue eyes, and pale skin. And yet my brothers were more of olive-colored skin and dark brown hair and almost black hair. And so that's when I say being chosen. Some way, my mother wound up having the third child. That was me. And maybe we should do that the next time we do a session, is go back to when I was first created and find out if I'm really my father's son. Maybe was created by extraterrestrials for a purpose. Go ahead.
That's really some very, very interesting thing to explore, and it's even more complicated than you can imagine. But I don't want to lead you at all. But I would love to explore it with you.
Yeah. Well, that's it. It also takes a lot of courage to be willing to go back and find out the facts and data of your existence, and what part it has played in what you've accomplished in this world that we're in right now, and just how far are you willing to go to discover who you are, what you are, where you came from, and what really is expected of you. So I'll just keep doing my best to see for the truth, because to me, go ahead.
Well, the thing is that there's consciousness in gametes, and there's consciousness in the 4 perinatal matrices where you're floating in the womb and there's plenty of room, and then it's constricted, and then there's the life-death struggle of labor, and the birth conditions itself utterly condition you in many ways, and with hypnosis you can recall and relive bodily these things that have actually been the parameters of your existence in a way that's totally unconscious, but they're accessible to your consciousness, and it's utterly fascinating to do that. Many people who have regressed will say, I chose these people, but with extraterrestrials, there's this other factor of mitochondrial DNA, and that the child, particularly Anunnaki, record a fetus as being in more than one womb and getting mitochondrial DNA from more than one woman. Even. It's quite complex.
Okay. So basically, let me see if I catch this right. It's to say that the fertilization of the womb could have been created by another source in order to create a branch of the species or what have you that they need to use for later on in our life as we grow up. So you're saying that could well have been the reason why I was so much different than my other 2 brothers. Am I kind of along with you?
Yes. That's right.
Okay.
Correct. That's
cool.
exactly it. And so that's one of the Anunnaki experiments we're actually trying. They had these zygotes. So they put one in one woman, Lilith, and she has a brown-skinned, brown-eyed boy. And they put another zygote just like that. Actually, from this first atom, they took the other zygote and put it in a blonde, blue-eyed woman. And the first girl of our species was blonde and blue-eyed. And of course, they got together. We know the rest of the story.
Yeah, that's so. When you take that, then you have to look and say, okay, who am I, or what am I part Anunnaki? Who knows? My DNA is a lot different. We'll go from that. So anyway, say it again.
And look for people like you, blonde, blue-eyed, or red-haired people.
Now, you might take that one step.
Start with DNA, and it could be recessive as well. So it's not necessarily your external appearance, but they're looking for certain DNA to work with you. So, and I don't want to lead the witness type of thing because we're going to schedule another regression. So we're going to not go too far into the hypothetical, but we covered this a lot in our various shows. There are thousands of people that are coming forth now as contacting experiencers, and so there's you can listen to a lot of them and compare notes, but we want to get your unique experience. And even if you listen to a lot of things, there are things that are going to come from your subconscious that nobody else has experienced.
Right. And, I was just, while you were saying that, made me realize, based upon what my towhead, blonde, blue-eyed, hazel green, blue-eyed youth growing up, there was an attempt, and correct me if I'm wrong with this, that the Nazis, Germans, were, as a group, were being tested to see if they could handle all the responsibilities and everything had, but it went haywire as far as the existence of all of us on this planet. So, I truly believe that a lot of the blonde, blue-eyed Nazis were also an experiment by extraterrestrials to see how they could control the whole planet, and it did not work too well. So a lot of that stuff ties together. You got to know the history and the background. So, at any rate,
I think you're right. Right. They keep they keep it hidden, but their hybrids are still running things.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, that brings us back into where are we now? And right now, and I've been coming forward with this and posting it in other sources, and that is that we are moving directly into full disclosure. And the naysayers out there, there's so much evidence and information that we're bringing forward that they can't deal with, and I guess they want to just go put their head down between their knees and go hide. They don't want to deal with the facts and the truth that, hey, we may well be the existence, the creation of Homo sapiens from the Neanderthals to create a species on this planet, and that's where we are now. So I'm good with it. I'm comfortable with it, and can live with the fact that I may be a partial manipulation of our species a little bit, although you can look at who we are, what we are, and where we are, and then my age. I'm still planning on pushing this age thing back the way it used to be way back before the big flood, and that's to live a lot more than just 80 years or 100 years. So we'll just that's a new test that I'm working on now, to find out just how long I'm going to be needed, how long they're going to need me to make the transition for all of us Homo sapiens on this planet. So we're getting there.
Well, it's not a given that you're going to die at a young age, 100 or less. The Anunnaki were extremely long-lived, hundreds of thousands of years, and so, people who are alive now are saying, oh, I'll probably live to be 80, 90, 100, whatever. Right. But what will you do if you don't die as expected by this current model, but you do live an extended life? And we are on the verge of this technology, and so I think it'd be great to start preparing to live, 500 years or 1,000 years or something, to start thinking about what would my life look like? What would the world look like? Would we be more responsible? Would we, be more responsible about our pollution and how we're destroying animal species? Well, how do you envision, if you are going to live an extremely long life, Ken, how do you envision what that would look like?
Well, it's one day at a time. Now, I look at it from the standpoint that we are a recording device, and if our brains don't get scrambled or get beat up, or that we don't become alcoholics and scramble the brain where it doesn't work, so long as we stay active and gathering information, there's who can say how far in the universe we, as a sentient, by sentient I mean intelligent beings, will go. I am prepared mentally and psychologically to be able to go on explorations and other galaxies events like that. And even at my age, where I am now, I'm there. My wife is working as a nurse's assistant and at senior centers and place like that. And some of these people there are not as old as I am, and they're just worn out and shot. And if you look at your body as though it's a device that we're using to get intelligent, get smart enough to survive within the galaxy, within the universe, then you probably can live longer. But if you don't take better care of this shell that we call our bodies, you're not going to live long enough to be of any benefit to extraterrestrials or to other intelligent beings or what have you. So that doesn't mean that I'm a total tea-tipper. I enjoy a very nice I used to enjoy a nice little glass of wine or something, what have you. So there are things that you can enjoy in life, but the other thing is you got to take care of this little old body and do the best you can. So I figure that the direction I'm headed right now, the way I feel, I think that I'm going to be pushing the limit of the current survival. Because if you go back in some of the ancient texts and writings, like Noah and them, they lived hundreds of years. So we may be moving back into that phase of our species, and that is extended lifespan. And if you don't like it, I guess your subconscious, that's the other thing, subconsciousness. And Dr. Lessin, subconsciously you can control an awful lot of what your body is going to be doing. And if you keep saying, oh, well, my grandma Maudie, she died when she was 65, I probably will too. And you know what? You probably will, because you're telling your subconscious that you're going to be ready to. Me, I'm pushing for 150 to start with. And so long as I can take good care of this shell, this body, who knows how long I'll be around. So there's a lot going on, and we're really moving into that phase of intelligence of our species on this planet Earth that we need to accept and start doing our part to accomplish what we were put here for in the beginning. Now, that might get you into the religious side of things, because I also have a doctorate in theology and have practiced even being a minister of churches there in California for several years. But that you have to know who you are, what you are, and where you are as to how long it's going to take you to get to where you want to go. And with that, I think I just shut up before I make somebody want to start preaching to me again. So we'll go from there.
Oh, well, you're doing fine. You're doing fine. I want to just bring in our producer. Deborah, are you there? Do you have any questions for Ken?
Yeah, I do have a question for Ken. So, what were your beliefs on God and human origins and UFOs prior to your NASA work and your education in theology? And what are they now?
Well, you really want to get me in trouble, don't you?
I sure do.
No, I was reared in a very strong Baptist family, and going all the way back as far as you want to go. And in what you have to get comfortable with is how to read and understand the history that's recorded in our biblical terms. There's a lot of information available there. I'm still a firm believer in the existence of God and of the deity that has put us here, but yet there's and then I can accept the fact that even extraterrestrials that have worked partly an experiment here on the planet Earth, and I can accept the fact that we are more connected to the Anunnaki or what have you, and that is where you get into the conflict with theology and those that don't. They can only handle a short part of who we are and what we are. I have no problem with accepting the fact that there exists in the universe or in the other dimensions, the Creator God that created us, that we're here. So I'm okay with that. So people are probably going to look at it and say, "Oh, then you're an atheist." No, I'm not. I'm a firm believer in the existence of this dimension that we're in. The God that had the intention of creating human beings and other beings and other planets here. So it can get really complicated, and when you get with people that their little minds can only handle being told you can only believe this way, and being a Baptist minister for quite some time myself, it's hard to deal with people who can only function in the direct full control of research and understanding who we are, what we are, why we're here, and where we're headed. And I'm comfortable with that. So I don't practice as a Baptist minister in church as I did when I was in California. So it's a tough road. It's a tough road, and some people are so strong they can say, "Oh, and then I'm a demon," and I'm not. I'm a realist, and I'm a scientist, if you want to call it that. But yet, I still do my prayers. I do study, and I do help other people, and I think that's what we're here for. Okay, I don't know if I answered your question.
So, Ken, do you believe that there is knowledge to be gained by the apocryphal texts that have been removed from the Bible?
Yeah, sure. How's that for a quick answer?
Hey! Not a very interesting answer.
Yeah, but you also have to be careful that of what you read and what you read into it, to be sure that it follows what you can accept, I guess. I don't know if that's going to answer it, and it may get me into more trouble that I have to avoid. But I have no problem, and I fully believe in the existence of God and what we're here for and what we were set here for. So I have no problem with that. And in fact, I'm glad of it and the experience I've had. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sort of. Kind of a cross answer. I'm sorry, but you've got to go. Go ahead.
So, Deborah, what kind of answer were you looking for?
No, there was no right or wrong answer. He's just taking the safe answer.
Well, no.
Right.
It may be the truth answer, too. You might have to consider that.
Were you devout in your faith prior to these experiences? And it sounds like you believe there's a source that we all come from, correct? You call it God or, Allah or Jehovah or whatever, right? You feel like there's one God that we all belong to. Yes, correct?
I'll go along with a yes on that.
Okay.
And I'm comfortable with that. Most other people are too. There, unfortunately, a lot of the religions have taken bits and pieces and gone to the extreme to where their brains won't allow them to be educated to the reality of why we're here and what we're here to learn, and they wind up killing people and destroying. I'm totally opposed to what some other religions have done to our species on this planet. It's pretty bad. So, okay.
So, Janet, I turn it over to you.
Okay. Sasha, go ahead. Continue.
Well, in existentialism, we have the premise that our intentions are manifest in our results, so that the universe and the experiences we have show intentionality of a consciousness. And you can deal with it in those terms and not even have to worry about minor differences in doctrine. But I find that in every single tradition, no matter what it is, there's always reflective people who come from their heart, and they go beyond the dogma and the ritual and understand the condition of oneness with other human beings and with the universe. And you know, professional anthropologist, and I can tell you that people that don't have reading and writing get to the same place. It's a matter of reflection and meditation, and it can take many, many forms, or also key experiences like a wonderful lovemaking, or climbing a mountain and giving birth to a baby can also give you that same kind of luminescent experience, which is a oneness with the universe. Certainly being in space, is, like you have, Ken, is part of it.
Sounds good. And
so, well, no, I'm just saying that these are that this is a perfectly. You actually never you never really age if you only live now. There's only one time, and also the assumption that when you cease to exist when you die seems so contrary to everything that all the wise people, the people who have died and come back, say. It ain't over when you die in your body, so get over it. You don't have to be so uptight about it.
I can agree with every bit of that, totally. So I'm comfortable with that. So that's all part of the training and education that we get in these bodies that we're using on this planet is at this time. Boy, we have really gone a long ways away from our space side. But I look at it.
It's all connected. It's all connected.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And that's that is all part of we're in school, if you want to put it that way. This is and if you screw it up real bad, you may have to repeat it. And so I have no problem with reincarnation. That's I'm comfortable with that too. Get another education to get it right the next time. Or maybe you have it right and you've been reincarnated so that you can help others make their way through. Yeah. So
that's a good perspective.
Thank you.
We're not always punishing ourselves by coming back to the earth. We might be here on a mission to help elevate everybody else and maybe bring us all forward into the light together, into love and higher consciousness.
Right.
So
I like to ask
right. You recovered your mission. It seems like you had recovered your mission, that you remembered part of why you came here, why you were born. You started to recover that in a regression. You said you had 2 sessions. I couldn't quite remember. Yes, you did have 2. So I recommend, we find the time to do a third. We're not going to do it live on air. We'll do it somewhere privately, and then we can report to you, our listeners, another time. But I forgot what I was going to ask you. What was I going to ask you, honey? I was going down the road. Anyway, we all have these senior moments. But somebody else, ask a question. I'm trying to get my question back. Go ahead. Get over here, Sasha.
I like the Benjamin Button thing, and I was going to ask for a binky.
A binky. Yeah, we're regressing. We can turn back the clock ourselves. We're always looking for some kind of extraneous invention or the aliens to come in and regress us and take us back to our previous glory when we were youthful. But, there's a theory that we can youthn ourselves so getting older. What do you think about that? Have you done any practices to youthn yourself?
You're speaking to me?
Yes, you're the guest.
No, I was going to go in discussion with Sasha, because now as he knows, I actually had done a lot of as a hypnotist for students and things in college, and helping them, take their exams and be ready. And then it was a case of being willing to step down and not step down, take out of the blocks that I had created to prevent anyone from hypnotizing me, until I got to the point where I wanted to use the skills that Dr. Lessin and I had to be able to do regression. And so that has become a very important thing in being able to understand why we are here at this time. And I have no problem with being the reincarnation and coming and doing it over again to get it right. I kind of hope that maybe this time was my last time to have to repeat it, and maybe I can go to another place in the universe to help another example of intelligent species of some sort. You never know what we're going to be tested to do, because if you believe in the direction I was going at, there has to be another dimension higher that we're having to grow to where we can be part of that as well. So it's an education. It's a growing phase. It's learning enough to be able to understand who we are, what we are, and why we're here. So, okay, that's enough of my theology. Okay.
Hey, Ken, I want to know about the little horses. Tell me about the little horses.
Oh, my. Real quick. My wife loves horses. We started raising miniature horses, good griefy, 25-something years ago. And we have, I think, about 20 of them here on our 3 acres that we have. And that's why I was almost a little bit late getting locked in for our meeting tonight on this, because we had some mommies and daddy and babies out there of little horses that we had to get out of the field and in there, because we had a storm came in and we had rain. So I was out in with thunder and lightning and getting little horses and things in their stalls where they needed to be. So I don't know what the heck that had to do with.
How big are they?
Huh?
How big are these? How big are they? Are they smaller than ponies?
Smaller than what?
A pony. How big are the little horses?
Yeah. At the shoulders, they're probably not more than 32, 33 inches tall at the shoulders where they are. So these are miniature horses. And if you go back in history, you find out that the miniature horses were the favorites of not deity, of royalty, that they got to have the little horses and things to grow up with when they were little kids. And then, of course, they had they would breed to get the bigger war horses until they get even bigger. So yeah, we have our little horses. Like I said, we've got too many of them here on the 3 acres, but they don't eat that much. They're easy to take care of, and one thing about the little ones is they use their intelligence to get what they want more than the big horses. And we have a couple of big horses. One of our daughters has 2 of the full-size big riding horses and stuff. They go on their strength and bulliness. That's why we keep them separate from the little ones. The little ones, they'll manipulate around to get what they want, the food they want, and how they act. They're really a fascinating little species. And I don't know what training that is for me, but I accept the fact that my wife, it makes her happy, and if it makes her happy, I'm happy. Okay.
That's great. That's exactly perfect. That's how you need to do it. Keep the wife happy. Yes. That's the key to happiness in life, is keep the wife happy. Anyway, I digress. We only have, about 7-8 minutes, right? Yeah. So what would you like our listeners to know about you, about your work, about your books?
About your plans.
And about, whatever. This is for you. We're focusing on you to present you to the world again, although you've been out for quite a while now, but just to keep you in the public eye, because your mission is important and what you have to bring to the earth is very important. So what would you like to tell us?
Well, I'd say that we are living in a very interesting time, and that is the time of disclosure and realizing that we are not the only intelligent beings in this universe, and approach it with an open mind, but be willing to go in and take what we've been programmed by our societies and beside our upbringing. If we realize that we need to be able to interpret what those were and look at it from the standpoint of who we are and what we are. I guess with my upbringing and being so strong in as a Southern Baptist and then theology and then getting into the religion and stuff, to be able to know who we are and what God has put us on this grade, why we're here and what we're trying to do. And it's to learn to do the right thing at the right time, and don't be so stubborn that we going to have to do this all over again, get reincarnated and come back and maybe get yourself shot or something. I don't know. There's so much that we can still learn at who we are, and I've been blessed with the opportunity to be involved with our space programs and get a better understanding of who. And I think one of the astronauts, I'm trying to think, astronaut Jill Merwin, very dear friend of mine, passed away, but when he came back from the trip to the moon and being on the moon and looking over the horizon and seeing the Earth rise and stuff, he became very strong in his belief in religion and theology and what have you, and realizing that he was given that opportunity to understand who we are within this universe. That's what I'm saying is, don't go with trying to convert anybody into something. They have to learn themselves. Okay, so. Oh. That's something popped up on my computer. I'm sorry. At any rate, that's what I'm saying is be a little. People say, "Oh, you're going to go to hell." Maybe I'm already living in hell. Okay. If we don't use our intelligence that God gave us, we're probably going to have to repeat it until we get it right. So I'm comfortable with. I think I've been doing the right thing, and get with people, like the lessons that have a good understanding of humankind. So, and if I can be of any benefit to help, I'm here. That's part of what I'm here for. That's about it.
Thank you. Wonderful. Yeah.
So if somebody wanted to contact you, do you have a website, Ken? Or how do they get a hold of you?
I would simply, I was going to say that go and it's all spelled out. Mars One Astronaut, MarsOneAstronaut, nice and fast. Mars One Astronaut @gmail.com. That is my private email. I left that one out. I shouldn't have done that. But at any rate, I get a lot of emails. Yeah, and erase that one. At any rate, I'll do my best to try to answer your questions, and my answers are going to be honest, the best that I can with what I understand and what I know, and don't try to call and convert me to your theology, because I've already been through them. I've been through the training, and you might not like what you hear. So, go ahead.
Well, we all have to be true to ourselves, and we all have a path that leads us to where we, our conclusions, and then it keeps changing. Just when you think you figured it all out, then something else comes in, and you have to rethink it all and figure out what the next step is. But, yeah, I always had problem with people proselytizing and trying to change me into their beliefs, but we're all unique individuals, and no two of us ever have quite the same experience as we go through this journey called life. Let's see, final words. Deborah, what would you like to add as we conclude this show?
What would I like to add as we conclude this show? I want to know more about Mars, but we're out of time.
Well, we'll have to do it again sometimes, because there's a lot going on Mars and a lot that we've been doing there. And with Andy Bashago and some of the others, you're going to find that we've been doing a lot of things on Mars, and there's a lot of stuff still left to find out. So, that's what I've come forward for, and the open to allow people to verbally shoot at me, get that one straight, about what's really going on, because the governments do their best to try to control everything we do, and I think we're making progress. So I'll help you if I can.
Sasha, what would you like to say?
Yeah, okay, from my discipline, subdiscipline of anthropology called ethnology, it's like this. Every being is like every other being. Every being is like some other beings, and every being is unique. All are true.
Yeah.
So we have oneness with everybody and everything, and there's no need to consider ourselves so separate from everybody and everything, because we are really the same as them, and so, and we are all individual and unique, and we're also part of the same great big, what do they call it, tortellini? What did that girl call it? Lasagna. We're the same lasagna.
Oh, yeah. What was her name? She was fun. Yeah. So, we're all connected. We're all one. We feel like we're separate. There was one guest recently said there's only one life, and we all have a slice of we're living, but it's all part of one big giant life. Who said that? Oh, someone recently.
We're mitochondria. We are E. coli in the universe's bottom.
Or E. coli, isn't that great? Okay.
So let's say this.
Our visitors. Go ahead, Ken. Final word to you.
I was going to say, we need to keep our minds open so that we can make some progress, because we are really living at a very exciting time of the existence of Homo sapiens here. We're about ready to make our place in intelligent beings in the universe. So we're getting there.
Oh, good. I hope we make it. Now, I think we're being watched and protected and loved and guided.
And challenged.
And all of it's all good and all groovy and all super cool. But we'll have you back, Ken. It's been a pleasure once again. Fun. We have Ken back everyone.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
Yeah.